So did you learn anything from your work, well I'm sure you did, on Game Change that you sort of brought into the campaign? They're really different tones, of course, but just were you inspired by the idea of people sort of manufacturing a candidate the way that happens with Marty Huggins?
You know, there was some of that. It was also the win at all cost mentality that we learned a lot about, and both in Game Change and also in Recount, which I did with HBO before.
Right.
And this film is partly about that. You know, you pump billions of dollars into a campaign, and you're being tugged on and yelled at by the extreme wing of your party, whichever one it is. And there's both in this. There's the Democrat Cam Brady, which is Will Ferrell, and the Republican sort of somewhat Tea Party-esque Marty Huggins, played by Zach Galifianakis. So we, you know, it helped to have the authentic version in mind from those two films, and then to kind of just go crazy off of that.
With the comedy in this one. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really struck a chord for me was there's this thing, political speech, you know, and these speech patterns that they adopt and isms that happen. Were there any real life ones that you sort of discovered that were particularly ridiculous that you brought into this?
That's a good question. I mean, I like the way Will Ferrell at the beginning of the very first debate spends the first 15 minutes saying, welcome to, you know, I'm glad you're all here, and I'm, you know, and he just said like 8 different things, and then you realize at the end he said absolutely nothing. And that I had experienced in watching so many of those debates and some interviews. I hope I'm not falling into the same trap, but I probably am. But that the audience actually laughed at the end of that, because it's no punchline. It's just, he just said nothing, and people applaud and fall for it, and our audience laughed at it. So I was like, oh, they get that. That was sort of a subtle joke, you know, in the middle of a film filled with lots of not so subtle jokes.
Do you think that this is sort of like, I mean, obviously it's so heightened because it's a comedy and it's really fun and funny, but is it in some ways alarmingly close to reality? I mean, just even all of the elements in terms of states being bought by other nations and things like that.
I think it's a training film for future politicians. If you want to just learn how to win an election, you know, I think Zach and Will, in their own separate ways, each in a different way, give a lot of great advice throughout the film, and if you just kind of follow their their model, you could probably win. It's not entirely facetious, because what gets attention now is outrageous behavior, and even though some of the campaign ads they make seem over the top, some of them were not as over the top as the ones we found on the internet, especially in local campaigns. My favorite one is the Demon Sheep ad that they ran in California, Carly Fiorina's campaign, where they had a guy dressed in a sheepskin on all fours with real sheep grazing in a field, and then he, you know, sticks his head up, and they put red eyes and a wolf, you know, like a wolf in sheep's clothing, you know, and that's for you know, national office.
Yeah.
So. You can't really overestimate how far people want to go. So maybe it is a training film for the future.
Well, as somebody who's a political junkie, what would you want audiences to kind of take away from this movie, besides a good time?
I would like for anybody who's kind of bored with all of the negative campaigning and frustrated by not seeing people actually trying to be good leaders, to have some comic relief and get to a chance to sort of blow off steam watching Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell take it much further for comedy, in the name of comedy.
In the name of comedy. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing this on AMC screens.
Thank you.